A sick 4-year-old orphan boy is abandoned by his own father, who declares him a burden. But a millionaire witnessed everything and did something that shocked everyone. Comment giving a rating from 0 to 10 for my story. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The rain lashed against the grimy windows of the inner-city public hospital when the middle-aged man appeared in the main entrance. His steps were heavy, laden with a rage that seemed to seep from his pores as he held a 4-year-old boy who looked barely 2. The child's frail body was enveloped in torn and dirty clothes, so large they seemed to swallow his meager frame. His feverish little eyes could barely stay open, and a persistent cough shook his small chest with each breath. The cruel father stopped before the cracked concrete steps and deposited the boy on the cold ground, as if ridding himself of an unwanted burden. The child instinctively reached out his thin arms toward the man who should have protected him, but was met only with looks of contempt. "You're a damn burden," the man shouted, his voice echoing across the wet courtyard. "I don't have the cash for your meds or the patience for your whining. You're on your own from now on." The boy tried to stand, his trembling legs barely able to support his own weight. Tears mingled with the light rain that began to dampen his face as he watched the man walk away without looking back. With each step the cruel father took, the child's heart shattered a little more, as if a piece of his soul was being brutally torn away. Across the street, inside a luxury SUV with light leather upholstery, a woman in her early 30s observed the whole scene through the fogged-up window. Her eyes filled with tears as she witnessed such cruelty. The millionaire owner of a large restaurant chain in the city had stopped there by chance, after a business meeting at the private medical center next door. But now she couldn't take her eyes off the abandoned child. Her trembling hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she watched the boy trying to shield himself from the intensifying rain. The successful businesswoman, who had amassed her fortune through savvy investments on Wall Street and ventures in crypto, felt her heart break at seeing such injustice. Her net worth in dollars was vast, but at that moment all her wealth seemed insignificant in the face of that child's suffering. Without thinking twice, she got out of the SUV and ran toward the boy. Her expensive heels splashed in the puddles as she approached the child who was shivering on the ground. When she knelt beside him, she could see up close the deplorable state he was in. His clothes were filthy, his hair matted, and his face marked by malnutrition. "Hey, sweetie," she whispered softly, reaching out her hands carefully. "Are you okay?" The boy looked at her distrustfully, his frightened little eyes reflecting years of neglect and abuse. When she gently touched his face, he flinched like a wounded animal, but something in his gaze conveyed a desperate need for affection. The millionaire wrapped him in her arms carefully, feeling how his little bones stood out through his skin. The boy was freezing, and his breathing was shallow, punctuated by coughs that seemed to tear his small lungs. She carried him to her car, turned on the heat, and covered him with a coat that was in the back seat. During the drive to her mansion, she watched in the rearview mirror as the boy clung to the soft fabric of the coat, as if fearing that this moment of comfort was just a dream from which he would soon awaken. Her tears fell silently as she thought about how a child so small could have suffered so much. Upon arriving at the house, an imposing property surrounded by manicured lawns, the boy's jaw dropped. He had never seen anything so grand, with its huge windows, marble staircases and chandeliers that sparkled like stars. The millionaire carried him inside, straight to one of the guest rooms that she quickly transformed into a safe haven for him. In the first few days, the boy could barely eat. His small hands trembled as he held a spoon, as if fearing that the food would be taken from him at any moment. At night, he would wake up screaming, haunted by nightmares where he relived the abandonment and abuse. The millionaire would spend hours at his side, singing softly until he fell back asleep. It was then that she decided to take him to the best private hospital in the city for a thorough checkup. The diagnosis devastated her. The boy suffered from a severe respiratory condition, a result of years of neglect and exposure to unsanitary environments. It was treatable, but required constant care and expensive medication. Even more shocking was the discovery that he had never had a complete meal in his life. While they waited for the results of other tests in the waiting room, a nurse approached her with a confused expression. She had recognized the boy and had information that would change everything. The revelation she was about to receive would cause the whole situation to take a completely unexpected turn. The nurse, a grey-haired woman with kind eyes, sat down next to the millionaire carefully. Her hands, calloused from hard work, trembled slightly as she chose the right words to reveal what she knew. "Ma'am, I recognize this boy," she began, looking fondly at the child who was sleeping in the businesswoman's arms. "He's not an orphan, like you must be thinking. His mother works here at the hospital, in the cleaning department. She's been looking for him desperately for weeks." The millionaire's world seemed to spin. During all those days caring for the boy, she had assumed he was an orphan, abandoned forever. The discovery that there was a mother looking for him created an emotional complexity that she was not prepared to face. "Where is she? I need to talk to her immediately," said the millionaire, her heart racing between relief and anguish. The nurse explained that the birth mother worked the night shift, cleaning the hospital corridors and rooms. She was a simple woman in her 30s who had lost her previous job and taken on this role to try to survive. Her name was kept secret by the staff, as she lived in fear of being found by her violent ex-husband. When night came, the millionaire waited in the hospital parking lot with the boy in her arms. The rain had stopped, but the biting cold of the early morning made her hug the child tighter, trying to warm him. Her hands, accustomed to signing multi-million-dollar contracts and managing large fortunes, now served only to protect that fragile being. The woman who emerged from the employee's entrance was even thinner than the millionaire had imagined. Her hair was tied in a simple bun, and the cleaning uniform, although clean, was worn from use. When her eyes met the boy's, she dropped the bucket she was carrying and ran toward them. "My son, my little one," she cried, her tears falling like a waterfall as she took the child in her arms. The boy, even sleepy, immediately recognized the smell and touch of his mother, clinging to her as if he would never let go. The reunion was heartbreaking. The birth mother covered the boy's face with kisses, whispering words of love and pleas for forgiveness. The millionaire watched the scene with tears in her eyes, realizing that despite all her money and resources, she could never replace the genuine love of a mother. Sitting on a bench in the parking lot, under the dim light of a street lamp, the humble worker told her story. She had been married to a violent man who drank too much and took out his frustrations on her and the boy. When she lost her job at a textile factory, she was unable to pay for the medical treatment the child needed for his respiratory condition. "I didn't have a choice," she sobbed, holding her son's small hands. "He said if I didn't give the boy to him to take care of, he would do something terrible to me. I thought at least with his father, he would have a roof over his head and food, even if it was little." The millionaire felt a deep anger grow in her chest. How could a man be so cruel to his own family? Her investments in high-yield ventures had never given her the sense of purpose she felt at that moment, wanting to protect that broken family. "I can help," she said, her voice firm despite the emotion. "I can pay for all his medical treatment and give you a job at my company. You don't have to suffer anymore." But the birth mother's response surprised her. The simple woman recoiled, shaking her head negatively. "I can't accept so much generosity, Ma'am. How could I ever repay something like that? I can't even read properly. What kind of job could I do for someone like you?" The refusal created a painful dilemma. The millionaire clearly saw the solution to all of that family's problems, but the mother felt intimidated by the world of luxury and wealth. The boy, divided between two completely different realities, began to exhibit strange behaviors in the following days. During the day, when he was with the millionaire in her mansion, he clung desperately to her as if fearing he would be abandoned again. At night, when his mother finished her shift at the hospital and came to visit him, he cried inconsolably when she had to leave. The child was being emotionally torn between two worlds that couldn't meet. The situation became even more complicated when the birth mother revealed that her ex-husband had found out where she worked. He had shown up at the hospital a few times, drunk and aggressive, demanding to know where the boy was. Security guards had kicked him out, but the threats continued through phone calls she received during work. "He said he has rights over the boy," she said, trembling with fear. "He said if I don't give him the child back, he'll do horrible things. I don't know what to do anymore." The millionaire realized that her good intention had created a web of complications that she didn't know how to solve. Her private lawyers couldn't provide an immediate solution, as legally the birth father still had rights over the child. The judicial system was slow, and in the meantime, the boy continued to suffer, divided between two lives. It was then that she received a call that would change everything. It was from an employee of her company, someone trustworthy who worked in the administrative sector. He had witnessed a suspicious conversation in a bar near the hospital, where the birth mother's ex-husband was talking about selling the boy to a foreign family who was willing to pay a substantial amount for an illegal adoption. The revelation left her in a panic. The man didn't want to get his son back out of love, but out of greed. He had discovered that there were people willing to pay fortunes for small children for illegal adoptions, and he saw the boy as an opportunity for easy profit. The millionaire felt the world collapse as she understood the gravity of the situation. Her hands trembled as she hung up the phone, and for a moment all her fortune accumulated through smart investments in stocks and cryptocurrencies seemed useless in the face of such a cruel reality. She raced against the clock to find a legal solution, but the local authorities questioned her intentions with suspicion. At City Hall, she faced judgmental looks from officials who viewed a wealthy woman trying to interfere in a complex family situation with suspicion. "Why would someone like you care so much about a poor child?" asked a social worker, her voice laden with skepticism. The businesswoman tried to explain her genuine feelings, but she realized that her wealth was being seen as an obstacle rather than a tool to help. Meanwhile, the birth mother lived in constant torment. Pressured by extreme poverty and the increasingly violent threats from her ex-husband, she began to consider accepting the money he offered in exchange for returning the boy. She didn't know about the sinister plans behind the proposal. She just saw an opportunity to pay off her debts and maybe find some peace. The cruel ex-husband appeared at her house one night, drunk and aggressive as always. He threw a considerable amount of money onto the table in the small, dirty kitchen where she lived. "Just tell me where the brat is," he said, his voice hoarse with alcohol. "After that, you'll never see me again. You can start a new life anywhere." The temptation was too great for a woman who had been surviving on bread and water for weeks. Her eyes fixed on the crumpled bills, imagining how long she could live with dignity if she accepted that offer. For a terrible moment, she seriously considered giving up her son's location. But when she remembered the boy's feverish little eyes and how he clung to her during her nightly visits, her motherly heart spoke louder. "I don't know where he is," she lied, pushing the money back at him. "And even if I did, I'd never tell you." The man became furious, breaking the few pieces of furniture that remained in the house and shouting even more terrible threats. When he finally left, she locked herself in the bathroom and cried until she had no more tears, knowing that she had made the right decision, but fearing the consequences. At the same time, the millionaire saw her businesses being harmed by malicious rumors that spread throughout the city. The ex-husband, in his thirst for revenge, had spread stories that she was a child kidnapper, a rich and unbalanced woman who stole children from poor families. Clients began to cancel contracts with her restaurant chain, and employees questioned her intentions. "Ma'am, sales have dropped 30% this week," reported her financial manager during a tense meeting. "The rumors are spreading on social media. They say you blackmail needy families." The pain of the injustice was almost unbearable. While trying to save a child, her reputation built over years was being destroyed by lies. Her investments on Wall Street, which had always yielded substantial profits, now seemed threatened by the image crisis she faced. The boy, who was temporarily in foster care while the legal issues were sorted out, slowly wasted away without proper medical treatment. The public facilities didn't have the resources for expensive medication, and his respiratory condition worsened with each passing day. He cried constantly, asking for his mother and the pretty lady who had cared for him so lovingly. During a supervised visit to the foster home, the millionaire was shocked to see how much thinner he had become. His little eyes, once feverish but still bright, now seemed dulled by sadness and physical suffering. She tried to bring medication, but bureaucratic rules prevented him from receiving it without official medical authorization. "Please at least let me pay for a private doctor to examine him," she pleaded with the director of the foster care facility. But the answer was always the same. Until the legal situation was resolved, nothing could be done beyond the basic care offered by the institution. It was then that a discovery shook the entire foundation of the case. An honest employee from City Hall approached the millionaire with bombshell information. The birth mother's ex-husband had forged documents to obtain custody of the child, bribing greedy officials who worked in the local adoption system. "He's not the boy's real father," the employee revealed, showing falsified documents. "There's a corruption ring here that sells children to foreign families. They falsify birth certificates and custody documents to facilitate the transactions." The revelation was both relief and horror. On one hand, it meant that the man had no legal rights over the boy. On the other, it showed the extent of the corruption that allowed innocent children to be treated like commodities. The millionaire took the evidence to the relevant authorities, but faced resistance from officials who were also involved in the scheme. Her complaint was dismissed, her lawyers were threatened, and she realized she was fighting against a system much larger and more powerful than she had imagined. In a moment of absolute despair, she received an unexpected visit. The birth mother appeared at her mansion in the middle of the night, completely emotionally shattered. She had discovered the truth about her ex-husband's plans through a conversation she overheard by chance, and now carried an even more devastating secret. "I need to tell you something I've never told anyone," she whispered, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "That man isn't my son's real father. I lied to protect the child from someone even more dangerous. Someone who never knew he existed." The confession opened a new dimension in the case, revealing layers of lies and secrets that had been created by a desperate mother trying to protect her child. But this revelation would also bring an unexpected connection that neither of the women could have foreseen. The birth mother's confession echoed through the silent room of the mansion like distant thunder. The millionaire led her inside, offering her a glass of water, as she tried to process the magnitude of the revelation. The two women sat on the luxurious sofa, an immense social distance between them, but united by the genuine love they felt for the same boy. "The real father is a powerful man in this city," began the humble worker, her tears falling on the fine fabric of the dress the millionaire had lent her. "I worked in his house as a maid when I was 26. He took advantage of me one night when his wife was away. The story that unfolded was heartbreaking. The young maid had become pregnant, and when she told her employer, she was immediately fired and threatened with ruin if she told the truth. Desperate and without resources, she invented the story of the relationship with the violent man to explain the pregnancy and protect the child from an even worse fate. "I thought that if he never knew my son existed, he'd be safe," she sobbed. But now I realize that all my lies have only created more suffering." The millionaire felt a strange pang of recognition when the birth mother mentioned where she had worked. It was one of the most established families in the city, owners of several major companies, but something else bothered her, a sense of familiarity she couldn't explain. It was then that the most surprising revelation of all came to light. The birth mother mentioned the name of the employee who had referred her for the job at the powerful man's house. It was the distant cousin of one of the millionaire's most trusted employees, a woman who had worked in her company for over 10 years. "My cousin always talked about the kind boss who treated all employees like family," she said, a glimmer of hope appearing in her tired eyes. "She said your company had special programs to help families in need." The unexpected connection made the millionaire remember a project that her company had been developing in secret for years. It was a comprehensive social assistance program, created to support employees and their families in vulnerable situations. The project was almost ready to launch, lacking only the final legal adjustments. "There is a solution," said the millionaire, her voice gaining strength for the first time in weeks. "I can expedite the launch of the company's family assistance program. That would give us the legal basis to offer medical, educational, and professional support officially." But before they could put the plan into action, the news they both feared arrived. The boy had been hospitalized in serious condition at the public hospital due to lack of proper medication. His respiratory condition had deteriorated drastically, and doctors warned that he needed intensive care immediately. The two women rushed to the hospital, where they found the child connected to artificial breathing machines. His pale little face was almost transparent, and his lips had a bluish tinge that indicated a lack of oxygen. The sight was devastating for both of them, who blamed themselves for not having been able to protect him properly. It was at this moment of absolute despair that the millionaire made the most important decision of her life. She called her legal department and instructed them to mobilize all necessary resources to immediately formalize the free medical assistance program in her company, starting with the mother and the boy. "I don't care about the cost," she said on the phone, her voice firm despite the tears. "I want this program launched today, and I want the best private doctors in the city to come and treat this child now." The transformation was almost miraculous. In a few hours, a specialized medical team was caring for the boy with the most modern equipment available. His small lungs began to respond to the proper treatment, and for the first time in weeks, he was able to breathe without difficulty. At the same time, the birth mother was officially hired by the millionaire's company, not only as an employee, but as coordinator of a new department dedicated to identifying and supporting other families in similar situations. Her personal experience made her the ideal person to understand and help those who needed it most. "I want to learn to read better, study, become someone capable of helping other mothers like me," she said, holding the millionaire's hand with genuine gratitude. "I want my suffering to serve to prevent other children from going through what my son went through." The social program became an extraordinary success. The millionaire's company, which had lost clients due to the malicious rumors, was now admired for its genuine social responsibility. Profits started to grow again, but more important than that was the sense of purpose that filled the businesswoman's heart. During the boy's months of recovery, the millionaire discovered something about herself that she had never fully understood. Her frustrated attempts to have children in her youth, due to medical complications that left her infertile, had created an emotional void that she had tried to fill with work and wealth accumulation. Caring for that child had awakened her repressed maternal instinct in a way that no fortune in crypto or dividends could satisfy. The boy recovered completely and grew healthy and strong. He became the living symbol of the social program, demonstrating in every smile and every game that even the most desperate situations could be transformed when genuine compassion found practical ways to manifest itself. The birth mother, now with a decent job and a healthy son, discovered a new perspective on life through professional education paid for by the company. She graduated in social work and became one of the most respected coordinators of the program, helping hundreds of other families find hope where before there was only despair. Years later, when the boy was already in school and the mother had become a recognized professional in her field, the two women sat again in the living room of the mansion. This time, there were no tears of despair, but smiles of gratitude and fulfillment. "You know," said the millionaire, watching through the window the boy playing in the garden with other children from the program, "I always thought that true wealth was in my investments, but I discovered that it was here all along, in the ability to use those resources to create real change in the lives of the people who need it most." The program continued to grow, serving thousands of families and becoming a model for other companies. The millionaire's true fortune was no longer just in her financial assets, but in the number of smiles she had helped create and the number of futures she had helped transform. And so, a story that began with abandonment and despair turned into hope and renewal, proving that when true love finds resources and determination, everyday miracles can happen in the lives of ordinary people, creating waves of transformation that spread far beyond what any currency or investment could achieve. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please comment, giving a rating from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.